Let us look at the Tucker Carlson post with him interviewing the DOJ, basically one of the lawyers of the DOJ.
I think it's part of the promise of this administration under President Trump to reform the government in the way that the people voted for.
Justice,
I did my week
DOJ.
of training after getting confirmed by the Senate. I was like, okay, guys, it's time to get to business. I want everyone to be very clear what the agenda is here. This catalyzed hundreds of lawyers to quit. They had crying sessions in the DOJ.
They cried? Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago.
Tell
us how he appeared on your radar.
He said the quiet part out loud, which is, I hire mainly black people for the positions of authority.
That's the environment that produced Brandon Johnson, where you could just like openly be racist. You know, I don't like Jews, I don't like whites, I don't like blacks. Who talks like that?
$200 million in some cases is what it costs a city or a county to comply with a decade-long consent decree.
So in the end, the lawyers get rich and more people get shot to death.
That is correct.
Wow, it's just so evil. It makes you think like, maybe we just burn the system down and start again. Thank you, Harmeet. Your Assistant Attorney General, one of the greatest appointments from my perspective in this administration, running the Civil Rights Division. What was it like when you showed up? What did you find when you got there?
Well, Tucker, first I'll say thank you for having me here. The Civil Rights Division is the sort of the color revolution wing of the Department of Justice. Okay.
So good.
You know, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat administration, there are career lawyers who are very focused on a particular agenda there.
Yes.
And so when I showed up, or when the president was elected, I should say, there are over 400 attorneys in the Civil Rights Division and about 200 staff, so a total of about 600 people. And,
I mean, it seems like
Christian
it's the
Clark,
same
my
way with
predecessor,
the video game
anti-police,
entertainment industry.
Open racist, got in trouble during her term for
a bunch of activists
not being candid with the Senate during her confirmation hearings on some issues. And so she had a particular agenda. She got in there and she pursued that agenda aggressively. And she had all the staff to do it. Now, under the first Trump administration, my predecessor in that job pretty much left it untouched. You know, he told me kind of like there were the career people there. If he wanted to get something done, they went to the U.S. attorney's offices. Well, you know, I came in with a different perspective. I think it's part of the promise of this administration under President Trump to fundamentally reform the government in the way that the people voted for. And so that means in the Civil Rights Division, we should be standing up for the civil rights of all Americans, not just some Americans. We shouldn't be weaponizing the law in a particular way. We should apply
and the way they've been doing it recently is it's very selective, and they're not fighting for the general population's civil rights. It seems like they're particularly focusing on what's going to give them the political edge of being reelected or morally grandstanding on whatever weird shit they're doing, right?
By those federal civil rights statutes that many of which were passed by and signed by Republican presidents and
a
Republican
lot of that has
administrations.
changed over
over the
decades,
government shouldn't be putting its heavy thumb on the scale.
just
in
look
most
at all
cases,
the
but in egregious instances, we should step forward and
third-party
right these wrongs.
organizations.
But what I found there was
like
a number
the
of lawyers, hundreds of
ACLU
lawyers
and
who were actively in
ADL
resistance
and some
mode.
of those guys.
You know, there were memos out there by former government lawyers telling
they don't do the
current
same shit they
government lawyers in my
did back in the
department
day
how to
anymore.
resist. If you're given a direct order,
They're more
ask for clarification,
selective
send 20 emails,
and looking for political
question it,
moves.
slow down your response time, say it can't be done. You know, so I was actually looking out for that when I came, and I did my week of training after getting confirmed by the Senate, and then the next week I was like,
They're
okay, guys, it's
very,
time to get to business. I want everyone to be very clear what the agenda is here.
sometimes.
So there are 11 sections in civil rights, and I drafted memos for each of those 11 sections for the lawyers and telling them, these are the statutes. So for example, Americans with Disabilities Act, this is the statute that we enforce, or Title VII, anti-discrimination, or some of the other federal civil rights statutes. And then That's the
Oh, yeah,
baseline.
yeah.
And then
Yeah, you have
this is the president's agenda. These are his
anti-discrimination
executive
laws,
orders
but
that
you
he's,
still
put out
see
there
people
about
discriminating
anti-discrimination,
people
about,
all over the fucking place.
anti-DEI,
And
about
their fucking
enforcing our
job
laws
practices.
equally. And that's the job. You are going to apply these statutes within the framework of anti-discrimination, even-handedly, and without fear or favor. And this catalyzed hundreds of lawyers to quit the Civil Rights Division. So,
Wait, they quit because you informed them of the law?
yes, and the law and the priorities. Their pet projects had changed. They weren't going to be able to do those the way that they wanted.
So
And
they thought that this part of the Department of Justice was just immune to democracy?
it has
Like,
been.
elections just had no bearing on this?
It has been. I mean, there were career lawyers there who were doing the same thing, no matter who's a president. And so suddenly, their little fiefdom that had remained untouched, like Shangri-La.
Oh yeah, they were
was
basically
suddenly
just pushing
having to be
papers
responsive to
and
elections. And so-
really
So
weren't
that's the
doing their
definition of the deep
jobs.
state, what you just described.
Right, they were
really
just
is.
Have no
fulfilling a
effect.
role.
It's
They
like,
were doing
there's no
like
way
the
to control
bare
these people.
minimum
They act totally independently
to
from
either
the
get
democratic
people
system.
convicted
I mean,
or
that-
to
that's
right
the problem,
or to
right?
Well, that's
win.
what I found. And so, in response to my memos, of course, they began leaking to the press.
I mean, why
they
do you
began
think
having
there's such a
unhappy hours,
disparity
which they would
between like
invite
how good a
supervisors,
lawyer
political
is and how
supervisors
bad a
to make
lawyer
their point that they
is?
were unhappy. We got the point. And they had crying sessions, struggle sessions, crying sessions in the DOJ.
They cried?
Oh, there was open crying in the halls. Crying, yes. And then one of my colleagues
Crying
described to
in
me,
the
it was the
hall.
last day a couple of weeks ago for some of them. They lined up in a phalanx and approached the elevator together, and then they left the building together, to show their solidarity for one another there as if they were
How old are
persecuted.
these? High school students or
Yeah,
adults?
these
High
are
school
30,
student.
40, and 50
Yeah,
year
that
old
sounds like high school
career
student shit.
attorneys in the Department of Justice. So
That sounds like some kid shit.
It's pathetic.
That sounds like
I come from the
some
private
stuff
sector,
you
as
do when you don't want to
over
work.
30 years in the private sector, 18 years successfully
That
running
sounds
my
like
own
some
law
union
firm,
shit.
and you get to work, and you put things together, and if it's not working out, you change tacks and you try something else. But there's no accountability, and so that really has been kind of an eye opener of dealing with that culture. But we're trying to change it. There are people left behind, and actually, I don't care what their politics are. They can have their views. I believe in the First
yes,
Amendment. The question is, are you willing to do the
activism
job
culture,
under the job description
Right.
as set out by this
Even
administration?
the
After all,
DOJ
is part of the
is
executive branch. The president
infected
gets
with
to
the
pick
fucking
the top,
brain
people
rot
running it, and
activism
he kind of gets to
culture.
set the
God.
agenda.
So half your lawyers quit.
Fucking
Yeah, that's right.
Who'd you
Karens,
replace them
dude.
with?
So we are in
Fucking
a Doge period
Karens.
here in the government, and so I haven't replaced the people who've quit as yet. So we're making do with
Oh,
who's
okay.
left
So
behind.
there's a
Some
lot of
whom share the
people
views of the ones
leaving, and
who
then they
left,
have
but perhaps
to
weren't as able to get jobs
right.
outside, and some who I think are willing to work with us. So
Yeah, they
So my
have to
understanding
still
was Doge was
they
gonna
have
be
to
applied to
put
like the
new
fat in
people onto the
government.
force,
But
vet
like
people.
DOJ
God.
is kind of central,
They have to
central institution
literally
of the country, and
reorganize the
having
whole
lawyers who
goddamn
can equally
department.
apply the law and sort of end lawfare, be honest and principled. That's important.
Oh, I think it's very important, and I've spoken to the Attorney General about it, and I'm confident that soon we'll be able to hire some lawyers who are down with the program of
So yeah, there's
getting the job
a
done for the
infected
American
brain
people.
rot
So,
that they're
looking forward to
still
that troop coming
dealing
in. But
with.
for now,
Oh,
I have
yes.
some political
Good.
appointees who are extremely dedicated and passionate. I brought in lawyers of my vintage, quite a few experienced trial lawyers, and a few younger ones as well, but they're all dedicated to the cause. And so together, just in a few weeks, we have already made a lot of news nationally, going after the mayor of Chicago, for example.
So first of all, thank you for I was just thinking of you, I should say, my former attorney, and a great attorney, going in to run the Civil Rights Division. I mean, they must have just died when you showed up.
Well, I didn't witness any of that, but the crying, the unhappy hours, the mass resignations, the leaking. There's a support group for former civil rights attorneys. And
These are all
Yeah, so-
indications.
yeah, these are all.
I wonder, are these the same people who have been leaking information too? Because from what it sounds like, it would seem like these people are the ones who have been leaking shit and who have been just fucking shit up, right?
All leading indicators of
Right,
the
literally
stages of
throwing
grief.
a
And so
fucking wrench
one of the
in
former
the
attorneys
system
goes on MSNBC
purposefully just
regularly
to
and
fuck
kind of
bottleneck the system.
vents about
literally.
the storied
I
civil
don't-
rights
I don't-
division of the DOJ
I don't know how
being
else to say
destroyed.
it.
Someone heckled me at the DMV.
Right, some of
when I
these
was
guys
waiting
are
to get my
literally
driver's license. So,
bottlenecking
it is
the
cutting to
system
core
on
of
purpose.
the liberal ethos that we're actually trying to
To
apply the
waste
civil rights
more
laws, which I
money,
believe
by the way.
in an even-handed way.
Equally, because we're all American citizens.
That's right.
Right,
Equal
all
protection
they
means
do is
equal for
waste
all.
more money by
Yeah.
you would
bottlenecking
think.
the system like this.
Well, you would think, and actually, I'm laughing, but
Because it fucking
it's terrifying.
right, it puts
what's been
everyone at a
happening there,
fucking
and
stall.
I'm truly grateful that you're there. So
have to
Brandon
deal with all
Johnson,
this
Mayor of
bullshit.
Chicago, tell us how he appeared on your radar and what the response is.
Well, so first of all, I'm thankful for Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, which I
Yes.
sued a few times before he did that, and now it's where I get a lot of my news.
Of course, you and everyone else.
And so I get criticized by the lamestream media, if you will, for being perpetually online. But that's actually where I see a lot of the civil rights violations in our country being exposed, because people, elected officials in our country, feel very comfortable acting with impunity and stating with impunity that they're going to discriminate. And so he said the quiet part out loud, which is in Chicago, according to his words, I hire mainly black people for the positions of authority. And, he listed out he was at a church, and he was in...
At a church, he said that?
At a church. And, I had a media reach out to me.
You got to yank their tax exemption, those freaking churches.
Well, I had a reporter reach out to me saying, how did this come to your attention? I mean, as if it was some kind of secret. I responded, well, the 3 angles of camera, I think, suggests that it wasn't meant to be confidential or anything. This wasn't like some kind of a sting operation. He publicly said, I find, people of a certain description to be better, and I want to help them build their businesses. And so I'm giving them government jobs. It's kind of counterintuitive. And what that's...
Yeah, I mean... Oh, no, it's not discrimination. No, that doesn't sound like discrimination at all.
Says, and what I've been hearing since I came out and said, "Oh, really?" And then we opened up a federal civil rights
I'm just gonna help this group of people over the general population of people.
My team, stepped up, and we've opened a federal civil rights investigation into the apparent violations of federal employment law that are occasioned by preferring one race over the other in hiring.
His predecessor, Lori Lightfoot, said at a press conference, I'm not talking to white people. I don't like them. I'm not talking to them. I'm not answering any questions from white reporters. And no one did anything about it. So that's the environment that produced Brandon Johnson, where you could just openly be racist. No, I don't like Jews, I don't like whites, I don't like black. No,
yeah, throw a fucking Brandon
Tucker,
Johnson.
Every university administrator in the United States, even in the face of
students for fair
admissions case
he
at
keeps
Harvard. So that's another project that we're dealing with at the Civil Rights Division is the absolute extent of the impunity with which campus administrators are continuing to discriminate and openly defy Supreme Court precedent. So we've opened up numerous investigations into that as well. But it's a pervasive problem in our country that racism has become institutionalized to the point where people just feel comfortable saying, yeah, I'm sorry you're a white man. Thanks for playing. And you don't get admission.
See, even she's saying, what the fuck? Oh, sorry, you're white. I'm sorry. You gotta go somewhere else, man. It's like, what?
You don't get a job, and you don't get to have equal opportunity. Asians as well. There's this blatant discrimination and racism in our country, and our job at the Civil Rights Division for so long as I'm in charge of it is to eradicate that. Take it on, make examples, and put a stop to it.
Everybody wants freedom, but what is freedom exactly? Well, here's what we know. You can't have freedom if you don't have privacy. 1984, you may recall, is a story about a total lack of privacy.
Stop it, you God damn it, Tucker.
Omnipresent.
You and your goddamn ass.
No privacy.
We're gonna fast forward this.
Because it's all open. Data brokers and big tech are recording and saving everything you do online and then selling it. Talk about invasive.
I think he has like, what, 2 or 3 baked-in ads? I don't remember.
Probably pretty hard for most people to do that, including me. The second is to use a VPN. The one we use is called ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is a new feature called Identity Defender. It's available to all American customers at no extra cost. Identity Defender scours the files of data brokers, requests to have your information removed from their files, and sends a notification
yes, we get it. ExpressVPN, yes. There's other VPNs out there too.
Scan the QR code.
You want to use it, go ahead. It's Tucker Carlson, though. Be careful. He might steal your soul.
It's free. It's ExpressVPN.com.
I'm kidding.
Every time I hear some administration talk about this, they frame it around Israel, which I find infuriating. Not because I'm against Israel, but like, what does Israel have to do with it? They're discriminating against American citizens. Why, from a public relations perspective, wouldn't it just be better to stick to the principle that in the United States, you can't use government money to discriminate against American citizens on the basis of race? Like, why not just say that?
Well, I think that there is a certain strain of anti-Semitism that's unique that we are confronting, but it's American citizens who are the victims of it. And so religious discrimination is also illegal in our federal civil rights laws. And so where you have students who are wearing yarmulkes and they're being blocked by their professors and their classmates from entering their classes, that's illegal. And we're just calling it that.
I know, but let's be real. I mean, that's just silly. Look at the numbers. Are Jewish students, 2% of the population? Are there more than 2% at?
Correct. Also, the fact is, there's even teachers who wear the yarmulkes sometimes when they fucking teach. So it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Ivy League schools, yeah. White Christian
no,
students.
I think it's just right. It's just moral, virtue signaling people who are
So like we could just
being
reduce it.
fucking
but
weird
you,
about
it's
it.
Like you can't even say that for some reason. I mean, the discrimination has been going on for 60 years against white Christians, and the numbers show it. So like, do you know what I mean?
But I'm saying that we are saying that under my leadership, and the people who I work with, they are taking it on frontally. It's racism.
Yes.
It is racist. It is illegal now under the Supreme Court's clear direction. And Harvard is doing it, and Princeton is doing it, and all of these schools are doing it. I mean, so there's many different
so all
kinds
the
of
Ivy
discrimination
League
happening.
schools
There's-
are practicing
there's
fucking
foreign money coming into our campuses.
discrimination.
And, there was a
Nice.
report recently that Stanford is basically under control of the Chinese Communist Party. And so all of these problems are happening at the same time. And, you know, they've been allowed to drift, and people have been bullied, and people are, I was explaining to someone the other day that to do this job correctly, you have to not care what people think about you at cocktail parties.
Well, clearly,
So-
but you're way past that. But can I just ask, like, I guess what I worry about, just to put a finer point on what I was attempting to express, I'm like, identity politics is just bad, kind of no matter who's getting hurt and no matter who's benefiting. It's just bad. It divides the country.
Well,
some
your
way to just,
identity
like,
politics
de-racialize the whole
are
thing and just
bad.
return
Your
to colorblind
fucking your
standards in admission,
gender politics
hiring,
are
and
bad.
contracting?
There is. I mean,
Right,
that's
the
what
fact
our
that
laws
people keep
demand.
doing
and so
these,
that's what the Supreme
right,
Court ruled in that
political
one case.
correctness
But, you know,
tests
to take
on you is fucking
the
awful too.
mayor of
It
Chicago,
doesn't do anybody good.
we didn't do that 4 years ago.
No, that's
we didn't
right.
do that under the Bush
Right,
administration. We
everyone's
just sort of,
trying to
you know,
test
people
your
in-
morality
people in
and
power just sort of
purity and
sat there
bullshit
and
like that. It's so
took it
fucking
as
annoying.
if there was some need to atone for prior sins by discriminating against
Right.
American citizens today. And I mean, you know, Asians are discriminated against in hiring in Silicon Valley. I've taken on many cases of that, and in
Oh, really?
universities,
Wow.
what did these recent
Oh,
immigrants
that sounds
do
great,
to deserve
'cause-
discrimination other than being successful?
Yay, I live
and then
in
being punished for it?
California. I'm gonna get
And so
discriminated
you really can't
against.
right the wrongs
That
of the
sounds
past
great.
by being racist today. I think we should. Really
And
have to have that
I am
level
a
of
computer
moral clarity and
scientist
just
too, so that's
say that and
that's even
operate that way.
better.
Well, it's collective punishment is what it really is. You're saying someone who looked like you did something bad, therefore I'm punishing you, or someone who looked like you was hurt, therefore you get the benefit.
Looks like
now. I mean,
I'm the
whole thing is
racist
just like-
now.
It eliminates the idea of the individual, of the individual, the unique human soul.
Right, which is counter to the very principles on which our country was founded.
Yes.
The entire Enlightenment was all about individual rights and responsibility.
Yeah.
And we are engaging in, Chinese communist level collective guilt and collective
It
punishment.
does feel that way.
It does feel that way, and it feels that way on campuses. It was, and I think back, I thought it was bad at Dartmouth when I was at Dartmouth more than 35 years ago. Almost
Oh, she
40
was
years
at
ago now when I
Dartmouth?
went to Dartmouth, and it's so much worse today in most of these campuses. But like calling it what it is, naming it as racism and discrimination is a start. Now we will follow through. We will bring cases. Proud of our president for spearheading, yanking money, our federal tax dollars, away from the institutions that are the worst
Yeah,
offenders. And I think
I
you're going
would.
to see much
Yeah,
more of that.
I think
I
it's
completely agree.
time
So
to
back to
start
the mayor of
yanking all
Chicago.
these
What happens
federal
next?
funding.
We've
Right?
opened up an
If they're going to
investigation. We've
do
demanded
their
some data from
weird
him.
shit,
We will be in
just
touch with
yank
some very
their shit.
specific
Right. Just
data.
take the
and we're
federal
going back
funding
years
away until they
to
fix their
understand. And what I'm
dumb
hearing from
shit.
members of the public already is, well, I applied for this job. I applied for that job. I didn't get it. I'm not the right race. I'm not the right gender, according to his descriptions. And so what the federal government has been doing over the years to ordinary companies is demand this data and then force them to hire according to a particular pattern. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to demand the data. And then if there's a pattern of discrimination, which I think there is, based on what he said, he's told us, we believe him at his words, they'll have to take action to correct that. They may have multiple, I'm guessing that plaintiffs' lawyers all over the United States are contacting plaintiffs right now in Chicago and preparing cases against the city. So the taxpayers are going to pay for this pattern and practice of discrimination that has been described by the mayor. But it's a long-standing pattern. He's just the one who said it out loud. It's been
Right.
happening
No, that's right.
for decades.
Yeah, the
in that
mayor is
city.
the
There's-
what?
At the same
Right,
time,
this
there's talk
is
about
all on
reparations
right.
in
Mayor
multiple cities in
Brandon
the United
Johnson,
States.
right?
I mean,
He's
again,
the
that's
one
just
that
a
was like
wealth
the
transfer from
reparations
people who,
guy. Oh, I'm
didn't
the
do anything wrong.
yeah.
people
We're
who
gonna
didn't have anything wrong done to them, really.
we're good
And
to
it's
our people.
counterintuitive to what we
blah
believe in our
blah
country.
blah. Right?
Yeah. Do you think that could happen?
No, this is all on him.
No,
He's the one
but
that said
talk
the
of it
words.
is manna for certain people. I think it is bait for Democrat elections, and it's popular in certain communities. And so it's crazy to see that. But I do think the pendulum is swinging back in some places because these policies, these wealth transfers, if you will, the episodic rioting that you see in our cities, it is not conducive to a peaceful lifestyle or productive society. And so I think you actually are seeing, even in deep blue California, my home state, my former home state, you're seeing the pendulum swing back in ways.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
She's,
San Francisco seems to be slowly pulling
she's
back from the brink of
she's a
extremism.
Californian.
San Jose has a mayor who's talking some sense, and so I'm hopeful, but we can't be passive about it. First, you have to be willing to call it
I
out.
hate to say it, but
and
yeah,
stand up
California
and say,
is
no, it is
not.
wrong
It's
to hire on the basis
no,
of race
it's
in
not
America.
it,
It is
Chief.
wrong to discriminate against people
It's
based
down
on
the shitter.
what their
Well, it
theoretical
has been
ancestors
down the
did
shitter
200
for
years
like
ago. This is wrong. It's un-American.
decades.
When you initiate an investigation into the mayor of Chicago, first of all, thank you for doing that. Thank you for. I think one of the benefits of what you're doing is just noting something that everyone else takes for granted, as you said. People feel free to say this, and you're just reminding everyone this is against federal law and it's immoral. So I think it's huge. But when you order as Assistant Attorney General this investigation, does the staff obey in your office?
Oh, my staff. Well, first of all, I'm surrounded by a lot of dedicated public servants
Okay, good.
me who are. Yes. So there was no. I mean, you get to have a few political appointees in the front office, is what we call
Yes.
it. So, they jumped on it before I even asked. Someone was drafting a letter on Sunday afternoon to do this. We also call the acting chairman of the EEOC, Andrea Lucas, who's been working hand in glove with us on other discrimination issues, and she's opened up an investigation as well. So the EEOC has subpoena power. We've asked for documents. The EEOC can actually subpoena them and do a commissioner's charge. And so eventually, at the end of their parallel investigation, they'll have data that they can share with us as well. So we're working together in the university setting, in this setting,
So
and in
basically,
other
they're
settings
all
with other
trying
branches
to
of the
get
executive.
information.
So, on any given day, I'm talking to the White House. I'm talking to colleagues of the Department of Education, Department of Homeland Security. I had a conversation yesterday, and other conversations like that are happening. So, the team is very focused on our common goals.
I hate even to say this out loud, but one of the ways that someone like you rolls in, you've got a public career, so everyone knows exactly where you stand. You've been highly ferocious over the years, and so there's no question what you're going to do when you get there. You're a known quantity, and you're a massive threat to the way things operate there. You haven't worked in a federal agency before. There are all kinds of weird customs and laws, especially around classification. And so someone like you, they're like,
there's
let's trap her
basically
in
like a
something. Are you worried about that?
hierarchy to
Well, among
state, federal.
Mike Flynn is the most famous example
and then
of this. But
employee,
It is. We've learned some
basically
lessons.
certain
There are always new
employees
ways,
have
and
certain
there is a deep state.
access to
And,
certain
just
information
yesterday I
and
had a
stuff like
conversation
that.
with my colleagues about the resistance
Yeah, it's
that
a
he was
whole
encountering.
fucking doozy.
And I had my feedback, but part of my background is as an employment lawyer.
Yes.
And so, we're not making some mistakes that some people who are,
Right. Fair.
simply defense lawyers might have made. I have a plaintiff's lawyer mentality. And so, I think, what would I do if I were the other side? And, so I think about that. So, we're giving people clear direction and opportunities. And if they don't want to take those opportunities and they want to be in resistance mode, this is not the place for them. And so, there are career paths elsewhere, and many people have chosen to take that. Some of them regretted it. Some of them tried to come back. I think it is best that people who have passions to do something that's opposite of what the president's current agenda is should do that elsewhere. not on the taxpayer dollar. Just my personal perspective. So
Yeah,
So you've
called
uncovered a
out.
bunch of stuff already, and one of the things that you uncovered, I think,
Literally
is
called out the
part of the answer to
fucking
why our cities become so
activists.
dangerous. And it has to do with consent decrees that have been forced on cities and police departments by the federal government. Can you explain how that has
Called
worked?
out the
Yeah, absolutely.
Karens
So-
and the activists.
the consent decree trend kind of dates back to the Rodney King riots. And,
Okay.
Oh
there's
shit! Here we go.
terrible rioting in
1994.
Los
yeah.
Angeles.
92.
Or
Yeah,
yeah,
about
somewhere
30,
around there. Yeah.
33 years ago. Yeah, I was in law school at the time. And
Yeah, I mean
you
there was
know,
still
the-
backlash till fucking
the
94.
police got blamed for I think, some fairly
they
rotten
fucking burned down that
cultural
whole
trends
goddamn
in our
section.
society. The police
Yeah.
got blamed trying to control that riot. I mean, you have people like Maxine Waters, egging on the crowd and feeding the flames.
Yeah, you got the
And
rooftop
somehow the police got
greens
left
and
holding
shit,
back.
right?
And so what happened was the Department of
Rodney King
Justice,
riots.
of course, California as well, but the Department of Justice opened up investigations into police practices. And so the trend has been Department of Justice, particularly under Democrat administrations, opens up what's called a pattern and practice investigation. And they basically say that anytime one cop does something wrong, it must be because there's a systemic
Yeah.
problem with the police department. There's poor
Oh
training.
yeah, you saw it in
There's
the Rodney
ineffective
King riots.
policies.
I mean, you
there's
see it
ineffective
at-
resources.
At
or there's
every
racism.
point in
There's always
time when
racism
there's
that's
a
underlying
when
most of these police
there's
consent decrees
a
is
person of
racism.
color,
I'll talk
whether it's
about
black,
examples
Asian,
as well. But
right,
so
Indian,
cities, by the way, I mean, you've all seen this in prosecutions.
fucking brown,
The federal
Muslim,
government comes
right?
after you
It's
with
like,
its
literally
endless
anyone.
resources and its
But if it's a
punitive
white
scope
person,
of,
no,
of
we don't
measures that it can
fucking
apply.
care.
Even America's biggest cities, worth with tens of billions of
People are
dollars of budgets,
fucking
they
out of
quake
your mind.
because it can become very expensive, and it can become a politically charged football to continue to have these federal court hearings and judges and all of that. So what typically happens is the DOJ says, hi, we are from the government. We think that you're a racist, and we'd like you to enter into a consent decree where you, the city, is going to pay Bob over here, who works at a big white shoe law firm, several $1 million to monitor your compliance with this. I mean, this is a binder. Some of the consent decrees are longer than this, hundreds of pages long of minutely detailed orders of what they're supposed to do to improve their police practices. And
who comes up with those guidelines?
the lawyers in the civil rights divisions of the United States Department of Justice.
Do they want to be?
Yeah, all of this is done by the government, right? All the systems that have been in place for this society to run is all done by the government. So the fact that they're writing all of this shit and not enforcing it is fucking insane.
Experience policing big cities.
They have no experience policing big cities. Some of them
it's like, God damn
have
it, you fucking
probably
assholes.
never met a cop in the wild.
You wrote all
these are
this
lawyers
shit,
from
but you don't
good
even
schools, and
fucking
they're very,
do it
idealistic.
yourself. Like, what the fuck?
By the way, most of them have never tried a case in their lives. And of all the consent decrees, one of the striking things I learned this week is of all the consent decrees that the United States Department of Justice has imposed, and there are dozens and dozens of them over the years, maybe hundreds, but certainly in recent decades, dozens per year in some years. In the Biden administration, they opened up a dozen investigations, and those are some of the ones that I've been examining since I got into office. They only took 2 of those cases to trial in hundreds of instances of investigations. They lost one, and they lost the police part of the other one. There was a housing aspect of the second one, which they won. And so in all the years that you've read about Los Angeles and Albuquerque and Seattle and Portland and all of these cities being under consent decrees, no federal judge ever looked at the evidence and found that the United States Department of Justice actually proved their case that there was systemic racism or systemic improper training. It was lawyers like the ones I described earlier.
I wouldn't say well, what if the
training
training was them trying to be a fucking
and by the way, over the last several years, sitting in their living room doing it because they were working from home during COVID. So in their home, looking at paper and selectively cherry picking evidence from these records that they forced the cities to turn over, reaching conclusions. Not reaching conclusions that a jury agreed with or that even a federal judge saw the evidence of, but simply bullying American cities into compliance and then presenting a fait accompli to a judge. And in some cases, most cases, the judges would say, okay, I agree. And what's particularly shocking is in so many of the recent instances of police consent decrees in the United States, woke prosecutors in those cities and woke city councils and woke mayors went along with them. They wanted them because they too don't like the police. And so it has been a sort of perfect
all the people
storm
who wanted
basically
all the people who wanted
to
the
pay
defund the police shit,
monitoring.
all the Democrats, all those people, all the lawyers and stuff.
And
all those people are
skyrockets
fucking out of their
in cities with
goddamn
consent decrees. This is called the Ferguson effect. After Ferguson, Missouri.
I mean, they knew
when
exactly
the
what
cities
they
under
were
a consent
doing
decree,
there.
cops
They
have to
knew that
suddenly
it
fill
was
out
going
reams
to
of paperwork
rake
every day.
them
Guess what? They don't want to
in
do that.
more
They don't
money
become cops to sit
if
there and
they
do paperwork.
defunded
So
the
they quit,
police.
they retire,
Because
they move to cities
then
where they do want policing to
fucking
be done
chaos
effectively.
can ensue.
Crime goes up because criminals
right?
now know that the policing is not being
Because
done.
now the police
And so,
can't
for
enforce
example,
any of the rules or
and I'm not
laws
just saying this
because
from
you
a
got a
biased
bunch of
perspective. Axios
lawyers who are
did a
fighting
review
against
of
the
cities under
cops.
consent decrees, and I think one of the figures is crime went up by 61%.
Or they're being
in Los
as
Angeles
corrupt
County
with
as a
the
result
lawyers.
after
So it's
consent
like,
decrees were imposed on
Jesus
the Los
Christ,
Angeles County
what a
Sheriff's
fucking
Department.
headache.
And so cities are less safe. Cops are.
Wait, can I just ask what? I mean, ultimately, the purpose of a system is its effect. So you could say, well, people don't. No one wants crime.
Basically, there's a bottleneck in every
if the
system
DOJ is
because people
causing
are
more
being
crime in American
fucking
cities, they want more
shitheads about
crime.
it.
Like, what is that?
You can just take the words of my predecessor.
Always the
face
greed
value, which
for
is,
fucking more
defund
money.
the police. And so defund
At
the
the
police has
cost of
become the mantra
everyone's
of
fucking
so-called law enforcement in the United States.
At the cost of
You
everyone's
don't want to
living.
think something bad's going to happen, but you got to take precautions in case it does, and that's why you insure your car and your phone and, of course, your house.
Oh, here's another
But what
one.
about your life? What about your family's future? Life insurance, you might not because it's
let's
expensive and it's
fast
hard to
forward
deal with. It's hard to get. And that's what Policy Genius does. It makes it easy and cheap, and you're able to give your loved ones peace of mind were you to exit unexpectedly. So use Policy Genius to find life insurance policies that start for just $276 a year, in exchange for which your family gets $1 million in coverage. $276 a year, $1 million in coverage. So that's a very easy way to protect the people you love and feel good about the future. How does it work? Well, Policy Genius combines digital tools with expertise, actual licensed agents who you speak to directly. You don't waste hours sitting around on hold. You talk to people right away, you get your options clearly, concisely, and then you get along with your life. So you can check life insurance off your to-do list with Policy Genius.
Oh, I don't want your life insurance.
PolicyGenius.com/Tucker. Click the link in the description to compare various life insurance quotes for free from top companies and see how much you could save. It's PolicyGenius.com/Tucker.
Any idea what the motive is there, other than just to burn down the civilization?
I mean, I don't
Well, I think
want to
it's
speculate
money.
about motives, but it has made our cities less
I
safe.
mean, look at how
It
fat
has
some of
made
these
us
people
pay
are.
for the cities to become
Right,
less
some
safe.
of these
That's
people are so
particularly galling.
fucking rich
You have to
from
pay
all this shit.
some person eating.
Just
at
look at how
Morton's,
much lawyers
on
make
our
just
dime
on one
and
fucking
attending
case,
conferences
if
on
it's
our
a
dime,
big ass case,
and
right?
cops who are people who put their lives on the line for us every day.
I mean, just look at the
are made to
fucking
feel
Young Thug
ashamed
trial.
of
Just
their
look at the
jobs.
fucking Johnny Depp
And
trial.
America's less
Right?
safe.
Some
I mean, every
some
time you
people
see,
could
there
dish
are
out
bad
a
cops,
lot of
I wanna be
money to
clear.
lawyers.
There are cops
Oh, I've
who
met some,
shoot
yeah.
people, and the DOJ also prosecutes those. To be clear, part of our job in the Civil Rights Division is a criminal section that criminally prosecutes bad cops.
Yeah, and think of the
I
cops
support that. I've
too.
signed off
They
on
could
several
get a fucking
prosecutions
big paycheck
so far
too.
since I've been there, and there's trials going on right now of cops who shoot somebody in the back, and they exhibit excessive force. But
Correct.
we also have to all.
I
be
hate to
punished
say it, but
collectively. Back to the
we
point of
obviously
collective
have to
punishment. We all have
vet
to suffer
and
because
keep
there's one bad
checking
cop or
the
two bad
system
cops.
every
Can you
time.
That's
imagine how many
insane.
But
bad
yeah,
cops there are
defunding
going
the
to be
police and
soon?
shit doesn't fucking do anything.
No
it doesn't
normal
help.
person wants to
It
be a cop.
obviously
It's too
puts more
hard.
people at
It's
risk.
not worth it. You
Like,
can
why
get
would you do that?
imprisoned in a lot. Philadelphia. I was talking to a cop in Philadelphia last week. I'm retiring. Everyone's gone. Like, you do anything, you go right to jail as a cop. If you enforce the law, you go to jail. It's not worth it.
I'm one of the few
Basically.
lawyers who's headed the Civil Rights Division who's actually sued the police, and I did it from the opposite perspective of what is expected. So in 2016, I was at a Trump rally, and there was a riot in San Jose, and it was an organized, well-funded riot. I'm just a citizen going to support my candidate. I did the Pledge of Allegiance. I met the future president backstage, and then all of us were subjected to mob violence. And what galled me was the police, 200 plus of them with riot gear, just stood there and watched. And I went and, during the course of my lawsuit, suing over the fact that American citizens were injured in a violent mob, I asked some of them, like, why was that? And you get to the bottom of that lawsuit, and it turns out that because of consent decrees and best practices of policing that are coming down from
Oh, yeah.
Washington, D.C.
bet,
and the
yeah.
DOJ.
Yeah,
The
they told
police
them not to
are,
fucking do anything.
Taught to basically, in a crowd control situation, stand there and watch and not do anything.
Yep.
So
It's so dishonorable.
it is insane. I was
Basically,
truly
they
shocked
just
by that. And so I
allowed
have
the
experience
crime
suing
to
the
happen.
police
I mean, you saw it
and,
happen
trying
with
to
the
get them to
Rodney King
improve their
riots.
practices
You saw
and be
a lot
more
of shit
aggressive
burned down.
on behalf of the taxpayers, which is the opposite of what they're usually asked to do in
And
these
you had
cases.
you
And so,
literally had to get
so we resolved
citizens
that
to
case
do
with
their
some
own
agreements
fucking
that they would
protection
do some
because
training
the
and
cops
be a
weren't
little,
doing shit.
different than what they were. But what we're
Right,
seeing
they
in the
literally a bunch
Biden
of people's
DOJ,
businesses were
which,
getting
again, I came in
burned
and I looked at the
because
books here,
people were rioting.
is
And then
it's striking
in
that,
turn
first of all,
started
they took
fucking
the 4 years to
right,
immediately begin
fighting
changing
back
course,
because they didn't
opening
want their
investigations
businesses
that
burned.
the Trump DOJ had closed and shut down. And then literally after the election where President Trump won in 2024, they filed several cases and made public several findings of fact in over 10 cities in the United States. They hastily ran to court in December in Louisville, Kentucky, and in January 6th in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to file new cases. Clearly at the tail end, they lost the election. They're not going to be able to carry this through, but they wanted to make public these consent decrees. So they put in front of 2 federal judges in these 2 cases in Minneapolis and Louisville these factual findings.
Yeah,
now, these factual findings are done by lawyers sitting in their living rooms
Yes.
on a dry paper record.
Oh, I
And
bet.
the findings are,
They're just
we
them
have
coming
reason to
through.
believe
Yeah, them coming
that
through some
these cities
information
engaged
and
in
then them
racist
putting their
policing
analysis
and
on
also
it.
violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's a common theme running through the
Right,
dozen or so consent
cross-referencing
decrees
laws
that
and
I've,
then
consent
looking
decrees
at the
and factual
case and
findings
then
predating a
cross-referencing
consent decree that
laws.
I've reviewed at DOJ.
Yeah.
So the idea is that if a drugged out or mentally ill person is the subject of a call to 911, somehow the police dispatcher is supposed to know, just based on a member of the public calling or somebody calling for help themselves, that they should have done what, I don't know, dispatched a social worker instead of a cop.
They should
to
have
the
done
scene after someone dies
XYZ
lying
when
in
they
bed.
only
To
have a
illegal
fucking
narcotics,
right a
disability?
tip from who.
I mean,
who
you might think
knows
so,
what.
reading some of the factual
Are you
findings.
being serious?
I am serious. Based on the factual findings
I
I
thought
have
it was a
seen from
crime
DOJ.
or a failing at very least. I mean,
Tucker, it's a mental health issue.
Yeah,
And
it's a mental
Actual
health
Social
if I'm addicted
Disabilities
to
Act.
Stop,
meth, I
no.
have special
It's a
protection?
fucking
Well, apparently the
Karen
police
and
dispatcher is
bullshit
supposed to know
issue.
by that 911 call that they shouldn't have sent a cop. They should have sent a social
political
worker.
games. They're being
I mean,
fucking
it's an
shitheads.
The federal
insane
They're doing
government is
illegal
doing that?
shit.
The federal
Literally.
government, DOJ, has been reaching those factual findings and then asking federal judges to impose thick, decade-long, minutely detailed consent decrees, out of which cities struggle to get out of. The average consent decree, Tucker, when the United States Department of Justice bullies a city into agreeing to it, is over a decade. So the problem isn't solved quickly by all the taxpayer dollars, the monitor, the police
Yeah, I
reform,
mean, just
the
look at the
community
homelessness
policing councils.
That
and
was
groups
supposed
that
to
are
be
set up in
solved
these
in
consent
what, a
decrees.
decade
The judge
apparently by
overseeing it's a
Newscomb?
problem
Yeah, how
that
to
was
the
verified isn't solved. In fact, it turns out that when you fund
Fucking
investigations and you fund monitoring,
nothing was done.
and a monitor
Still fucking a
decides
bunch of
when
homeless people.
good enough and your performance has improved, you get more monitoring. You get more years of that. You get more fees paid to big law firms like Hogan Lovells and some other big law firms in the United States. And the citizens pay the bill. So it's a tax on Americans who live in cities because one cop, or maybe no cops in some cases, did something wrong. And so it's a totally broken system.
Yeah.
And when we came
Yeah,
into
all
office,
of the
it was
some
the
of these
priority of this
guys
administration
spout
to
a lot
review
of
all
ideology,
pending
but then when they
consent
put it in
decrees, all
practice
consent
and
decrees that had yet to be
nothing
entered by a
actually is
judge,
done, they're just
all
like, oh
pre-consent decree
no, we
factual
did,
findings
we
found by
said
the
it
Department
would
of
be
Justice
done,
and
but
announced
for some
publicly,
reason it didn't
shaming
work
these
out.
cities.
I don't know.
And look at the data.
Could you
and
give
see,
us more
are
money?
these really
It's like,
justified?
get
And
the
our
fuck
immediate
outta
conclusion,
here.
by the way, not just our conclusion, in the case of Minneapolis and Louisville,
Oh my god.
federal judges
Oh,
to which
you,
these
you,
were
you had
presented had some tough
decades to
questions.
solve the
And
problem.
in the case of Louisville,
You had
the
a bunch
judge
of money to help
asked
you,
the DOJ
and then
lawyers,
you
these
and then you come
DOJ
back
lawyers
with
I've
like,
described
oh
from the Civil
sorry,
Rights
we didn't
Division
get it fixed.
to explain
Can
themselves.
we get more
How did
money,
you reach
please?
that conclusion?
It's like
What
you-
are the data supporting your conclusion?
Shut the fuck
How do you
up. Oh, you
account
deserve
for
a
variables
fucking
like
bullet.
what are the high crime areas? I mean, are the high crime areas racially different than the population of the city? These lawyers did not have answers. It was embarrassing. And so the judge refused to enter the consent decree in Louisville and sent the DOJ back and said, I need your answers. Guess what? This is days before the administration is about to turn over. So we've asked for a couple of continuances.
So, what are the criteria that government lawyers use to reach the conclusion that there's systemic racism that requires a dissent decree? I don't really understand.
Well,
I mean, it's one thing to say in a MSNBC segment, there's systemic racism, but if you're a Civil Rights Division attorney, you have to prove it, correct?
you should have to prove it. But as I
Yeah,
said, no jury has ever agreed with the
But what are the
DOJ.
measures? Since racism is an attitude that has, it can have manifestations, of course, but it's really like a mindset.
It's a yeah.
How do you prove
How do you,
it?
Well,
yes?
so
how
we
do you
have- we
prove? Well, I mean,
Of course,
right.
being the
I mean,
government,
they
we have
say the
statisticians
mens
on
rea,
our
right?
staff,
the
at
mindset of the
Department
person,
Justice,
the motive.
I was surprised to
Right.
show up and thinking, oh my gosh, let me look at all these lawyers. What is their trial experience? Oh, there's a PhD in statistics here. That's going to be really useful in court. But
Like what?
they could
Right.
be, by
What
the
drove
way.
this
There are
person to
cases,
go
so
to
if
the
you're
extent
properly
they did?
deployed,
To
they
have
could be, but if you
fucking,
never
right,
have to
law
prove your
enforcement
case,
and the
you never have
lawyers
to
to
use
come
them.
in
You
and be
simply
like,
beat people
"Hey,
over the
we
head
got
with
to
a
interpret
statistics
what
book."
this guy was
So that's
trying
what's
to do.
happened here. So I'll give you an example. Memphis, Tennessee is one of the cities that the outgoing Department of Justice issued some pretty lurid-looking factual findings in. And so when you start reading it, you look at, hey, the findings are, well, Memphis is racist, and their arrest rates of African Americans are disproportionate.
I'm sorry. Let me just say, anyone who's been to Memphis, it's such a wonderful place. I love
I mean,
Memphis, but if
look,
you come
with
away
all-
thinking,
yes.
the real problem in Memphis
Memphis,
is racism.
right. I mean,
then
there's a
you're
lot
a
of good
liar.
places
Well,
in
so
those states
Memphis
where
is
there's
majority
fucking a lot of
black.
crime.
Yes.
The police force
It's
is
just there's a lot of
majority
crime, right?
black.
Yes.
And guess what? The homeless population, which is
They're
the
nice
subject
places,
of this
but
consent
it's
decree
just
finding,
there's fucking
pre-consent
so
decree
much
finding,
goddamn
is
crime.
majority black. And so the idea that there's disproportionate arrests of people who are on the street and potentially committing crimes is racist. Black cops, black population, and black homeless population. How do you reach that conclusion that racism, you have to reach that conclusion because you are biased yourself, and the lens that you're looking through is a lens seeking racism.
It is
and if
literally
that's
the
what you're
lens
seeking,
of color
that's what you find
of someone's
in each of these
skin.
cities. And that is
That's
what
all
they
fuck-
found
whether
in
it's
each of these
looking at
cities.
the color of
that
the
It's like,
skin,
it's like the
examined.
whether it's
ANC or
looking
something.
at
But,
their
in the
religious
end, like Memphis also
background,
has not only the country's
whether
highest
it's
murder rate, or
looking
one of
at
them,
their
worse schools and
parental
like, contaminated
upbringing,
water and
right? Whether it's what
crumbling
kind of
housing
jobs they
stock
had,
and like no businesses.
Right.
And it's there's so many problems. And if you just think it's like white people are the problem, nothing ever gets fixed.
Well, that's the problem with these consent decrees. And so we examine these. And look, one of the things people need to understand as a lawyer, when I go into federal court, my name as the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights is on all of these documents that we file in court. Sometimes the Attorney General's name is on it as well. But my name is on all of these documents where we charge somebody. And I have to be able to say to the judge, look the judge in the eye and say, I believe in these findings of my Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Judge,
Correct.
I stand behind them, and I'm confident that what we're alleging in these papers is true. Well, Tucker, I looked at these findings, and I and the lawyers who report to me in the DOJ said we cannot stand behind these conclusions. I can't stand in front of a judge with a straight face and say that Memphis's problems are racist cops. I mean, they're not racist. They simply are dealing with a population that happens to have a particular racial makeup.
Yes.
The conclusions are not correcting.
Oh,
for that.
you're
The
racist
conclusions are not
because there's a
correcting for what
bunch of
neighborhoods have
black
crime.
people you're hating.
There's
It's like, what?
cherry picking of statistics.
Literally,
There's
that
imposing
area is
Americans
mostly
with
made up of
Disabilities
black
Act
people. How are we
layers
hating?
onto these consent decrees that don't exist in the law. The Americans with
That makes
Disabilities
no
Act
fucking
does not
sense.
impose on police
I just-
requirements of how they respond to
Well,
911 calls. It just
there was that
doesn't.
one McDonald's incident
Wishing it were so
where
does
basically
not make it
everyone
so.
was
And so,
all the workers were
what's
black.
happening is
Right?
these
It's
cities are
just-
having to
Yeah,
agree to these
that
things
fucking
because they're
basically
afraid of the
happens.
consequences, or they have a woke city council that wants the hands of the police to be tied. That's the most corrupt thing, is the cities who are basically begging for these
It was
consent
I
decrees
think
to
it
be
was like
entered.
a
And,
Florida.
in the case
I
of,
forgot where it was exactly.
Louisville, we're
But it
dismissing
was
a
one
city
of the
that's
So
southern
weird.
states.
You're a city councilman in a city and you want the crime rate to go up? Like, what is that? I think it's the weirdest, most suicidal thing I've ever seen.
No one's talking about it until we started looking at these. And so we're dismissing and withdrawing the Minneapolis and the Louisville consent decrees that were put in front of federal judges just a few months ago. We don't have confidence in them. We are telling judges that this is not something that the DOJ can stand behind. Now, in each of these cities, by the way, Louisville has already agreed to hire its own police monitor without the DOJ forcing them to do it. I mean, that's not my business. I wouldn't necessarily think that the problem goes to that degree. Someone's friend who's a lawyer is probably going to get paid out of that, and good for them. But in Minneapolis's case, Minneapolis has already entered into a state consent decree. So why are they still, going along with this federal one? Well, they thought the federal one would be worse and more onerous. And so Minneapolis has publicly stated that they're going to oppose the Department of Justice's attempts to dismiss the case against the city. Believe that or not.
That is like the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, you would think as a city leader, your job is first to protect your city and then deal with your problems yourself, which they're already doing in Minneapolis.
They're begging to be punished by the feds for crimes that they probably didn't commit.
Yeah.
Not even crimes. Just,
Oh, well,
sort of reason to believe that the police
well,
practices
they
are
have reason to
improper or
believe they
inadequate.
They
did
wanna
some
be punished.
actions
Spank
that
me
were
harder, Daddy.
improper and
I want to put words into their mouths, but
And
their
it's just
actions are
like,
that they would oppose the
what?
DOJ letting them sort it out themselves.
You want us to?
I mean,
you guys.
it is what it
that's
is.
not a good
So,
idea. It's gonna waste
not every
money by
city is
doing
like
it.
that, and
What
not
are you
every
guys
municipality is
doing?
like that. There are 6 other jurisdictions that the
Why don't
DOJ
just
issued
fix the
findings
issue?
in
It's
that
what?
we're withdrawing.
I'm completely obsessed with ALP, and we're
Just
totally
fix
focused
the
on
issue. What
getting
the
it
fuck
into
are
the
you
hands
on
of
about?
everyone who wants a tin of it. We're working very hard to do that. We're very proud to
It's
announce
that
our
easy,
newest
just-
retail partnership, NicoKick and Northerner. This is a huge step
No,
forward to
we
making
want
ALP more
you to
accessible.
go
Then
through
effortlessly
this
celebrate
long
NicoKick offering
legal
10% off their customers
process.
ready to
Dude,
break up
get
their
the
old
fuck
house and
out.
use the code TCFriends at checkout. Learn more by visiting NicoKick.com or Northerner.com.
Oh
TC
my
Friends
God.
at checkout.
Fucking.
Did you know that this was
Yeah.
going on?
Look, I knew that consent decrees were an abusive
Yes.
process. I did not realize the extent to which there was collusion in this process.
Fuck you.
I mean, we have
yes,
perpetual
the
monitors
bureaucracy.
who have made decades of their lives getting paid. Like, there's
No,
one
we want
where-
you
which
to
the
try
city
us,
that just
even
closed
though
up its
there's
consent
nothing
decree,
we did
DOJ dismissed it
possibly
after
wrong,
a decade. A
and we
single
just need to
man
do
got paid
better.
$1 million a year to monitor
A year?
a year
God
to
damn
monitor
it.
a city's compliance with a DOJ consent decree that went on and on and on. And, these consent decree monitors set compliance rates of 95% or 100%. And it's like Zeno's paradox. You never actually reach 100% because you never reach 94%. You never reach 95%. And the judge is a guy getting paid to determine the outcome. And it is a broken system. Some of these consent decree monitors have fake companies, shell companies that haven't been registered with any state.
Oh yeah, that
Some
too.
of them
Yeah,
have
there's a bunch
fake
of that going around
nonprofits,
too. Yeah.
that
All
aren't
the
really
shell
nonprofits.
companies.
They sell
Yeah,
themselves.
it's not just
and,
the fucking
there's never any
politicians
accountability.
and the
So at a
government
minimum,
doing it.
what we're
It's
doing
also
for all of these
fucking
existing
big
consent
companies who are
decrees as well
doing
is
it
to
too.
look at these monitors.
So that's annoying.
Are they real? What goals have they accomplished in a decade? Are things better in that city? Are the people safer? What are we getting in exchange? Some of these consent decrees, Tucker, cost cities over the course of this 10 years. Just forget the monitor who's getting paid $10 million on average. $200 million in some cases is what it costs a city or a county to comply with a decade-long consent decree, because they have to do all these endless trainings and they have to fill out all these forms. The
'Cause you're
Department of
onboarding
Justice
new
in the last 4 years
people, right?
has spent
Training
65,000
them up
hours
to be
in
your
the Civil Rights
axemen.
Division, which only had about
Or
60
axe
lawyers. So
women. I don't know,
tens of thousands of hours.
Whichever the gender is, right?
monitoring these consent decrees. I mean, it's a mind-boggling volume of waste.
So in the end, the lawyers get rich and more people get shot to death.
That is correct. That is the average outcome of a consent
Yes,
decree.
basically you get trained to get shot to death.
It's just so evil. It makes you
You
think
get
like
trained to just lay
maybe
there
we
and
just burn the
fucking
system down and
take.
start again.
Well, what we're doing is one by one looking at every existing consent
Fucking
decree, and I haven't
Christ.
gotten through all of them, but we got to the point where 6 weeks in, I said, look, we have to put a stop to these. I mean, some of these cities, so Phoenix, Arizona, we're dismissing the findings, we're withdrawing the findings in our pre-consent decree efforts there. Mount Vernon, New York, a tiny
Basically, you're
police department
trained
with,
to
you know,
take
what
the beating.
I would say a couple of
They
practices
want you
that
to
I
take
wouldn't
the
necessarily
beating,
agree are the
okay?
best practices, but they've also agreed to stop doing them. So why is the federal government getting involved and putting together thick reports? Oklahoma City is another one. Trenton, New Jersey is another one. The Mississippi Police Department is another one. The Mississippi,
yeah, I have a
the,
good, I have a
the
good meme
state
for
police
that.
is another one, and then we have Memphis, which we already discussed. And so
this is what the government
in some
wants you to
cases, these
do.
cities didn't
This
go
is how
along
they
with
do
them.
their
They
shit.
fought the DOJ, so good for them having some integrity in their city government. I've heard from members of Congress in some of these jurisdictions
it.
who said this consent decree is simply. I mean, I'll give you the example of Phoenix.
This is exactly
So
how
Phoenix
they'll
seems to be an
fucking deal
attempt
with
by
you.
the Department of Justice to go after a sort of purple, reddish jurisdiction and hold them accountable for trying to impose quality
some
of
of the
life
people in the
standards. So, for
DOJ
example,
and lawyers
Phoenix has been
and
called
cops.
to account in the DOJ
Yeah.
report that we're withdrawing
They're
as part of my
They're
investigation
actively working against you
for
purposefully.
moving the homeless along. And what law do they cite in this consent decree analysis? They cite the Boise, Idaho case that people are familiar with, where the court, the Ninth Circuit, held that it was unconstitutional for Boise to try to move homeless people off the street unless you had a
Yeah.
nice housing to put them in. Well, the
I
United
wonder
States
how
Supreme Court
many
reversed that.
mayors and
So
governors
they
have
reversed it in the
said,
Grants
"Oh
Pass
yeah,
case.
we're
So
gonna fix the
even
homeless
today
problem."
In the DOJ's
Yeah,
recent consent
the
decree, we're
homeless
simply ignoring
problem.
binding Supreme Court precedent that says
I
that what the
wonder
police
how
were
many
doing in
times
Phoenix
they've
is
said that
A-okay
shit.
under the law, and hoping to simply bully them
Nothing's
into
fixed,
compliance.
by the way.
This is not what our
Because they
federal
want
government
more
should be
people
doing.
living on the sidewalk. Like this is, if you take 3 steps back, it's like so
This is
dark,
democracy, by the way.
so diseased. You want more violent crime. You want more drug abuse. You want more people living on the street. Why would you want any of that?
Why
Pair
would any
it up
elected
with
official
trying
of any
to
party
protect and serve
want
you.
that
Right?
in the United States in 2025? Well, I don't get it, and so in these 8 cases, we're getting rid of them, and there will be more. I'm confident.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know any of this.
I mean, just look at what happened with
part
this
of the
shit.
explanation for
right?
why we
They'll
have
fucking
more of
get
all
you
of those
stabbed.
things. You look
Right, they
around,
don't
you're like,
wanna
I
work
don't
with you.
recognize this.
They
Like,
work
I grew up
against
here.
you.
We never had any of this. Why do we have it now? And part of the answer clearly is what you're describing, which is an attempt
they even got Barney too.
elements
Okay?
of the Department of Justice
Even
to
Barney. Even
create
Barney
these
will get
outcomes.
fucked up.
Well, and on top of that, there's some corrupt rent seeking as well. Let's just
Well,
call it what it
clearly.
is. They're like I said, these white shoe lawyers. One was thrown out of a casino earlier this year. A prominent lawyer at a major law firm was thrown out of a casino. He was intoxicated. When the police came, he said, "I'm with the DOJ. I'm the police monitor, and so you can't touch me."
Well, I mean, if
Other
he's drunk and
cities
being
have reported to
belligerent,
us,
I mean,
lawyers, my colleagues in the DOJ, that if you dare complain about my bills, I'm going to keep you under a consent decree longer. I mean, it's that level of shakedown.
My bills, as in billing, as in
billing.
payment to me.
My billing. Yeah. When the bills are questioned, the city gets punished harder. So,
So basically, people are trying to use their status and strong arm, right? Doing criminal activity. Ah, yes. That sounds great. So even the top officials that are supposed to represent America and not supposed to do this kind of shit are swinging around their status, strong arming and doing criminal activity. Oh, okay. That's great.
you would hope judges are
about
looking
right.
at these things carefully. Guess what?
Sounds like
Judges are
Biden.
busy, and judges are not looking at them that carefully.
And do that
So just to
fucking
be clear,
blanket pardon.
you
Yes,
have half
I'm
of your
absolved
staff attorney
for
positions
everything I
unfilled
did.
because
Those
you don't
past
have the budget to
15
hire
years of fucking up
new
the
lawyers,
country.
ones who might actually want to follow the law. But we somehow have the money, even post Doge, to pay monitors $1 million a year to oversee arrangements that lead to more violent crime.
Well, the monitors are not being paid by the DOJ. They're being paid by the cities.
Yeah,
so
it's
the
city- yeah,
cities that are under the lens
state,
of
yeah.
the DOJ are having these costs imposed
Or well,
on them.
yeah, the city
And
mayors.
there's, like
and
I said,
stuff,
no
right?
accountability. Their annual conferences of the judges who impose the consent decrees, of the monitors who enjoy the fees and don't solve the problem.
Yeah,
and
it's
the,
basically there's
city
like
officials
five,
who
right,
think
five,
it's all
6
kind
layers
of
to
a
this.
game. Let's have
Because
community
at
policing.
every
and let's have
literally
bunch of,
every
random
hierarchy
people of no
level,
background
you're getting
and
fucked.
dealing with crime. Tell the police
That's
what
just
to
how
do.
it is.
There's
You
annual
literally
junkets.
have to play their fucking stupid games
It's an
sometimes
industry.
just
It's
to
a
get anything done.
multi-billion-dollar industry making America
Right? If
more
you want to
unsafe
fucking
for the most part.
Does anyone
dethrone some of
ever
these
consider
assholes,
the
you
fact
literally
that, like,
have to
violent crime
fucking smack
causes
them off.
racism? Actually, I mean, that's just true. When people are afraid, well, first of all, when people are afraid, they become much less reasonable. I think everybody does. It's just like a human response, right?
Well, people are afraid in America's cities.
Yes.
And we have been made to believe that riots, like after the, Minneapolis incident with George Floyd,
Yes.
like the regrettable incident wwhere Breonna Taylor was
Yes.
shot. By the way, my department is prosecuting the 2 cops who lied to get a no-knock warrant in that case. I mean,
Yes.
that
Oh
is
yeah,
a
the
serious
Breonna.
offense,
Yeah,
and
that
we're-
was a
we're
weird
gonna
one
hold
too.
those
Yeah, that one didn't
individuals
make any
accountable.
sense too.
Right.
Which is different than holding the whole city of Louisville and all the taxpayers in that city accountable for mistakes that were allegedly made by
Yeah,
two individuals.
the killing of
So,
Breonna Taylor.
You know,
That's
what a concept. You know, individual responsibility for
Yeah,
individual
that was the botched
mistakes.
police
and
raid
so,
one.
And we do that regularly. In each of these
So yeah,
jurisdictions,
and that
Tucker,
one, those
where
those cops,
the DOJ
they were
has been
doing some weird shit.
examining these police departments, there have been police misconduct cases, and cops have been punished either at the state level or at the federal level. That's appropriate.
Yeah, they're
bad
literally
actors in every industry,
some of these
and,
cops
you
are
know,
doing weird shit.
need
They're like
media
trying to
and law and
plant
medicine,
evidence on
but
people and shit. It's like, what the
asking
fuck?
cops as a matter of a multi-hundred-page consent decree to sort of be doctors.
Right, it's like a
predict
shit out of
Americans with
GTA, right?
Disabilities Act
Fucking
outcomes.
right, some Miami
adverse
Vice
outcomes.
shit, right? Doing some
It's just
fucked up,
insane, and it doesn't
corrupt
work.
cop shit.
And let's face it, if these lawyers were any good at organic
Right.
chemistry, they
Corrupt
wouldn't
cop,
be
corrupt
lawyers,
lawyer,
right?
That's right.
I
corrupt
mean,
politicians. You got it
uh,
all.
So the government cannot be the be-all and end-all solution to all social ills, and this is an example. And so
Is there anything you can do about the consent decrees already in place?
we are examining them, and we're going to be bringing to the attention of judges inappropriate conduct by monitors. The one I just mentioned is one who is ripe to be mentioned to a judge as someone committing misconduct. Monitors who claim to have nonprofits or corporations, but they don't. We're going to be bringing those to the attention of a judge.
I don't understand. I mean, I thought the legal profession was self-policing through the bar.
It's
I
supposed.
don't
Well, I
understand
mean,
why
they're
nobody is ever
supposed to be
disbarred
vetted,
except for
right?
like representing Donald Trump. I don't
But,
understand
yeah,
that. Where
well, I
is the
mean,
bar, the state bars?
I think anywhere
you raise a
along
very
the way,
good question,
anyone can get
and a
corrupted.
question I've raised myself. And so we have today in 2025 lawyers who are under prosecution. I mean, this is happening in Arizona, in Nevada, and other jurisdictions, California, or a bar complaint for who they represented. You're absolutely right. And what arguments they made, even privately, to their client. And not even in front of a judge. John Eastman is an example of that, and,
Yes.
and so many others.
I mean, there is
And
a
yet you
term
have
called going rogue,
corrupt
right?
monitors who are holding cities hostage effectively. and
Yeah,
all the
some of these
taxpayers
people
of those
do go
cities
rogue
for their
and
personal benefit.
become axemen for
and then
like
you
the
have
fucking shittiest
city
things
councils who are
possible.
elected to represent the people, and instead they would like to see the cops handcuffed and see the streets burning in their cities. And this is a lack of accountability. It is a broken system, and at least the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division is not going to be participating in making that broken system worse under President Trump's leadership and under our current Attorney General.
Amazing.
I know, what a concept, right?
Well, that's an amazing story. I didn't even know that was happening, but it explains a lot. So basically, you just got there to run this division
6 weeks ago.
It's
Yeah,
incredible.
got there to run this
so there's probably
multiple
so many things
fucked
that
up
you're
layered
looking at
division. Yeah,
that you're going to want to
Sounds
examine
great.
that have been going on that most people, including me, didn't know about. What are some of those things?
Well, there are 11 sections in the Civil Rights Division, and some of the things that we're going to be looking at in coming weeks and months include the rampant anti-Christian bias happening throughout the United States.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
that too.
there's anti-Christian bias happening within the government.
Well, I mean, there's anti-Christian
there are,
right? There's
there
anti-Christian,
are chaplains in the
anti-Jewish.
military who are told to tone down their Christianity under the prior administration, and that's
Basically,
insane.
you could
And,
say
know,
there's
in America,
anti-all
we're founded
religion,
on religious
in a
liberty,
sense.
and specifically the Protestants who came here to be
Yeah,
able to
because you
practice
got
their
a lot
faith
of-
freely, and so
A lot
we're
of pocket,
bringing back a
right,
focus on that.
pockets of
There's
people
a
just
law
spewing
called-
out
Bless
fucking
you.
toxic
Thank you,
shit.
and it's
all
important,
the
and it's
time.
important for all people of faith in America
I
to
totally
be
agree.
able to
Completely agree.
worship. And so we are bringing a number of cases under what's called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which is when jurisdictions are discriminating on the basis of zoning against houses of worship, be they Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or any.
Basically,
That's right.
mosques,
That's happening throughout the United
churches,
States.
yeah, people
I don't
overstepping
I don't like
their
it when they hassle
bounds.
the
right?
Scientologists. I didn't like it when they hassled the
When there's
Orthodox Jews in
clear
Borough Park during
borderline,
COVID.
right?
It's not
and
about. I'm not
yeah.
Jewish or Scientologist, but
People
like,
are fucking
I agree
wild.
with you.
I mean-
People of faith have an interest in religious freedom. Period.
And we have a federal law that gives them higher than First Amendment protection, that law that I mentioned. And so we're going after Forestburg, New York. We're going after other jurisdictions that are doing this. And so we are going after discrimination in employment, like the Chicago cases. And people have been texting me all in the last 24 hours and 48 hours since we started this investigation, giving me other examples of other cities doing the exact same thing. So we have a lot of
Mhm.
work cut out for us. The DOJ civil rights
Oh, yeah.
generally
And it's
covers,
probably
not
happening in
exclusively, but
somewhat
generally
every
covers
state
government
as
discrimination.
well.
I mean, occasionally it will verge into private discrimination. Colorado is forcing a Christian camp to supposedly allow boys to be in the girls' changing
Oh, that's
rooms.
the changing. Yeah,
That's
okay,
a
that one,
violation
yeah.
of the religious liberty
Yeah,
of
we've
the
already.
kids and
Well,
the
I
families
already
going to
heard
that
some of these.
Christian camp. We're going to be going after schools that try to take from parents their natural, God-given, and constitutional right to control their children's education, be it with sexualized curricula or transgenderism that's happening in our schools throughout the United States from the most unlikely places. And, you know, I kind of joke, I'll start the day at 8 o'clock in the morning or earlier sometimes. And throughout the day, one of my deputies jumps into my office and I'm like, oh, what fresh hell is this? The sheer volume of violations of our civil rights happening by the estate and local petty bureaucrats and wrong-minded private people throughout the United States is
basically people who are
sometimes. So
working
if I
against
had
literally the
400
Constitution.
lawyers plus at my disposal to go after them, we would keep them busy
Well,
doing
they're
good work
going
for
against
the
the
American
rule of
people
law,
all day long.
Bill of Rights, and
I think
a
you're
bunch
hero,
of rules and
Harmeet,
regulations.
And I
they're
will
trying
say
to
you're one of the
bypass.
only people in all of Washington, D.C. who doesn't really want to be invited to Politico's White House Correspondents' Dinner Party.
And I wasn't invited. And that's okay.
Oh, gross
I'm too busy
Politico. Yeah, so
working and
Politico.
knitting in my
Right,
spare
there's
time.
certain news
Harmeet Dhoni,
news
Assistant Attorney
sites
General of the United
and
States.
news
you.
media
Thank you.
outlets, right, mainstream, that are just do not have your best interest in mind. Right, they are literally fighting against your own fighting against the Constitution in a sense. They will do whatever they can
I think
to
it's
push
part of the
right
promise of
the other narrative. Right, the criminal narrative, really. But yeah, there you have it. Tucker Carlson and Dylan. What was her name? Dylan versus Chicago Mayor Brent. Oh yeah. Dylan is what's Dylan depart? Yeah, Dylan's department. Yeah, Dylan department. That's the law firm. There we go. USC professor calls for Holocaust again. Wait, what? Stop. Abolish the white race, Harvard. Oh, these are... No, this dude compiled all of the fucking articles that a lot of the Ivy League schools were fucking spouting. Oh yeah, what is it? Okay. Yeah, I read this one. Yeah, I remember some of these. South Carolina bans whites from applying for jobs. Right? It's like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, as you can see, there's some weird shit going around. Oh yeah, we gotta get rid of all the white people. But every other people, like, only blacks is okay. It's just like, what? Alright, anyways. This is, if you want to see this, I don't know, I think he just has this on Twitter or X. I don't know if he has this on anywhere else. He probably has it on Rumble. I think he uses Rumble. But yeah, if you want to check this out for the full thing again, Tucker Carlson.